Hey y'all. All right, we're on to part C. So, reading this question, it says, what is the smallest diameter tree that would produce usable lumber? Okay, so first I'm going to go ahead and kind of sketch out this graph because I think it's easier to look at when we're sketching. I'm going to put my points on here. Remember, these are really two different answers. This is 1 plus the square root of 31 over 10, and then this is 1 minus the square root of 31 over 10. So -1 is here. 1 minus the square root of 31 is to the left of -1. So I'm just going to put it here. Again, it doesn't have to be a scale. And then 1 plus the square root of 31 over 10 is going to be over here. Then I'm going to use my leading coefficient. I'm like, hey, it's positive. I know I'm going to end up. I know my y-intercept is negative, so I'm going to put that down here at -3. And then because it is degree 3, my ends are going to be pointing in opposite directions. So this guy is going to be coming from down here. And then I'm just connecting my points. So I'm like, boop, boop, boop. And they all have degree 1, so they're all going to go straight through. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to think about what does it mean to be a 0? To be a 0 means that when I plug in one of these values into the equation, my output is going to be 0. So obviously, I don't want to make 0 board feet of lumber, right? So I'm going to go ahead and cross off any value that is a 0 because obviously I want to make more than 0. And then I'm looking at this part of the graph over here and I'm like, how can I have a negative diameter? Because remember, your zeros mean the diameter. I'm like, well, I'm going to cross off these values over here because that doesn't even make sense. I cannot have a negative length, so let's not look at that. And then looking at the right portion, I also don't want a value that's going to produce a negative amount of lumber, right? So I'm like, that doesn't make sense either. So I'm going to cross that off. And at 0, that didn't make sense because I'm producing 0 board feet. So then my answer has to be D, needs to be greater than 1 plus the square root of 31 over 10. That's the smallest diameter I could have, is just above that root there, and then it would just continue on forever. So the answer to this is that as long as the D value is greater than this root right here, you are good to go. So smallest answer right here.